It's time again for another episode of the Doc Review Show. This week we're taking a look at 2017's Trophy. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Doc Review Show. I'm your host, Alan Berry, and joining me as always is Justin, aka Joe Raznick. Steve Moore. What's going on, Justin?
So let's do our thing and explain this week. What is it, Joe Raznick?
Well, I started laughing because I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I think if I give you the spelling, you're still not going to get it. So it's
I'm not.
So it's Joe, and it's Rasnick. How would you say that?
Raznick, yeah, I would say Raznick. But what does that mean? All right, so what's the reference?
Okay, so it's the 1987 classic with Michael J. Fox and Joan Jett in a movie called Light of Day. And Michael J. Fox is a guitar player in a struggling band, and his sister Joan Jett, and they team up to conquer the world. I don't know the real summary. I can't remember. But have you ever seen that movie?
I've never. What is it called? Light of Day?
Light of Day, yeah.
I've never seen that one. Yeah. From 87.
Yeah, 1987.
I see. Okay. No, I've never seen that one. Michael J. Fox. All right.
I don't recommend it.
I don't know how much time you're putting into coming up with these references.
So today, about 40 seconds.
Okay, 40 seconds. That's good.
So today we're taking a look at 2017's documentary called Trophy. Trophy is a startling exploration of the evolving relationship between big game hunting and wildlife conversation. It's not conversation, dumbass.
Conservation.
Wildlife conservation that will leave you debating what is right, what is wrong, and what is necessary in order to save the great species from the world. Fuck it, I need to learn how to read. In order to save the great species of the world from extinction. So that little quip is from IMDb. My thought on the overview, and then Justin, give me yours, is it's basically two sides of how some of these animals in Africa should be basically kept alive. How do we keep these animals alive? If we have big game hunting them, then they all die off. If we don't have big game, they all die off. But according to this movie, it kind of takes a look at what if we have big game hunting, but that money goes to keep these animals around.
They give an interesting statistic at the beginning of the film. It says since 1970, 60% of all animals on this planet have gone extinct. And to me, that was super shocking. Like, I didn't realize, I thought maybe 60% of endangered species at the time. And I was like, no, like of all animals have gone extinct since 1970. So how do we save our ecosystem? How do we save animals from becoming extinct from our actions is an interesting question. And I think it's a solid premise to base a documentary on for sure.
And it makes strange bedfellows because on one side of the table you have guys that want to go hunt these animals, and probably some women. And then on the other side of the table you have some people that actually want to save these animals. I think getting down in some of the weeds, the issue is, do these people really want to save these animals, or is this just a big business for them? And this documentary, they kind of follow three different people. The person that they follow the most is a guy called, his name is Philip Glass. And Philip is a sheep breeder and a lifelong time hunter, and basically it kind of follows him to get what's called the Big Five. And the Big Five are elephant, buffalo, lion, leopard, and rhino. They follow Philip Glass going down to South Africa in his hunt for these big five animals. And in the meantime, they just kind of talk about these different issues with him. The other two people one is a lawyer named John Hume, and he is the world's largest private rhino breeder. He believes that the legalization of this trade of rhino horns should happen because by having the ban on rhino horns, it's only increased the more poachers poaching. So John Hume believes in, hey, let's legalize it, and then that way this will go back down. Now, just so
and secondly, with that I found that was super interesting was he didn't just want to legalize it to reduce poaching, but the main reason was obviously so that he could actually sell rhino horn himself and fund his operation of continuing to take care of these rhinos. I mean, he's spending over $5 million a year just feeding and taking care of these rhinos. And eventually, there's no profit in that. The only way to profit is from selling the rhino horn, which another interesting statistic I thought was amazing was he was holding this one rhino horn. It's pretty good size because you can get on the black market $250,000 for this rhino horn. And most of that's based on still a old belief in supernatural powers of these rhino horns. Like they have some kind of medicinal purposes.
Male enhancement, I believe, is a big one.
I just cannot even understand it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't live in that world. I have no there's nothing that would ever make me want rhino horn. Like I'm not a hunter. I've never hunted. It's funny. There's this little story about the guy Glass. It tells the story I think he told about killing a bird when he's a kid, right? I think that's a common thing. That happened for me too. When I was a kid, I had a bunch of BB guns and I went out and I was like, oh, there's a bird on the bird wire, and I shot this bird and I killed it. And then he talked about when after he killed it, he went over to it and it was like this beautiful thing. And I was like, not me. It was like I felt extremely guilty. And I was like, this was just senseless murder of an animal for no reason. And I never killed an animal ever again, and I don't ever plan to.
The same thing happened to me when I was a kid. I was out with my BB gun in my backyard and saw a bird, and I just I aimed for it. I really didn't think I was going to hit it, but then once I hit it and I saw it flapping around, I remember just tearing up and being so sad. And then my brother felt bad for the bird, so he just took a shovel and started whacking it until it was dead. So it left a real sour taste in my mouth for hunting, and I never hunted ever again or ever tried to hunt. I don't know if that was really hunting, but let's be fair to hunters. I've known a tremendous amount of hunters in my life, and all the majority of the ones I've known have been good people. And if you kill what you eat and you use what you hunt and you hunt fairly, I don't have a problem with it at all, especially consider that I eat beef and I eat corn dogs and I eat all kinds of meat. I have no place to stand up and judge the hunters that hunt in a way that, in my opinion, makes sense. Basically, you use what you kill.
Yeah, I'm not here to argue the efficacy and ethical nature of hunting in particular. I think hunting for game like you said, you're going to actually use and eat is actually a more ethical thing than, say, participating in factory farming, which is what I do on a daily basis. You know, when I'm eating meat, almost all the meat I've consumed is probably almost certainly from factory farming, which I think is causes much more suffering to animals than hunting does. Hunting for sport is, to me, this messed up part of the human brain. It's literally because hunting for sport is just a nice way of saying killing for fun or killing for enjoyment. That's really all it is. However, when you look at the situation, hunting for sport, and if you're using that meat to replace your diet of meat from another source that's from factory farming, I think that is more ethical, even if you're enjoying doing it. That's why I think this is such one of those interesting ethical conundrums, because there's so many situations where I'm like, man, I don't want to agree with something, but I kind of do. However, when it comes to the safari hunting, like this guy wants to do, he wants to go and kill rhino and buffalo and lion. I see no sense or purpose in that, because you're not harvesting that meat to be eaten. Right. I
can see this issue so many different ways, and there's no clear right answer. I see both sides of the story, and that's one of the great things of this documentary is I think that they show both sides of the story. It's not a Michael Moore where it's leaning heavily one way. This documentary really shows both sides. If that hunting for that animal provides a village for 3 or 4 days of food, well, then I guess I'm okay with that particular hunting as a sport, or hunting as a sport.
That's what makes this whole situation so seemingly difficult to put your ethical thumb on, because, for example, to go hunt a rhino, they said it costs about $350,000 to hunt a rhino. So you spend this $350,000 to go hunt this rhino, and that money is going to go back into either that community, that village, or that rhino farm that then will breed more rhino, right? And take care of more rhino. That I think that's where that money goes back into, right?
And here's the question that I have that they don't show is, okay, yeah, they're saying that this money goes back into the saving of these animals and maintain them, and they got to have security because people are always trying to poach them, and there's no doubt that this is a very expensive operation. But what we don't know is how much of that is pocketed when they say, okay, this goes to take care of this property and take care of these rhinos. Part of it they're doing out of the good of their hearts, maybe, but I don't know how much they're making from it as well. all. I mean, they stated something like the John Hume guy in his storage of rhino horns, he has $15-20 million of value sitting there. So,
which is why he wanted to make the moratorium, get rid of that so that he could sell those rhino horn and fund his operation without the killing of other rhinos. So, because I think he was funding his operation through letting people come to his farm and hunt them, right? And that makes no sense. Like, I agree with him. He's like, why would you want to keep a species alive, funding the keeping the species alive by killing them, when you can have another alternative means of doing so that is simply selling their horns that they regrow? You know what I mean?
So let's talk about a little bit of that. So what John Hume does is he goes out. I never saw how many acres of land, but I'm imagining it's thousands. And he basically just keeps an army of rhinos there. And what they do is every 2 years they go out there and they shoot them with some type of tranquilizer. They saw off the rhino horn, and then according to them, this doesn't hurt the rhino at all, and the rhino gets back up and he's back to playing with his buddies a few minutes later. A couple things I don't know, and I didn't research it, is that true? They should have had maybe an expert chime in that yes, that is true, that the rhino horn, they're fine without it. I kind of believe that they do need it in some way as a prey or for prey animals, but they're so big, maybe they don't need it. Anyway, so
do they eat animals, though? Do rhino eat animals? Or are they just herbivores? I don't think they're carnivorous. I don't think they eat other animals. But I could be wrong. Again, I'm not a rhino expert, so.
Okay, so let's move past that. Let's say that John Hume, they cut them off, and then they store them in a very secure area because they're not allowed to sell these horns at the time that this documentary was being made, because there had been a law a couple years previously banning it. Because the thought was, if we ban the sale of rhino horns, then this will stop the trade of rhino horn. But just like a lot of governments, when prohibition or whatever, they think that they try to take it off the market, that it's going to go away, but of course it doesn't go away. So part of this story is where John Hume is fighting the government trying to get this law overturned. In the meantime, he's stocking all these rhino horns he collects in some type of secure area.
The whole argument of this film seems to be that the profit motive has to be in the right place. It has to be incentivizing the right things. And in its current state, it doesn't seem to be. I'm not convinced that the best way to save an endangered species, or like the rhino or lion or whatever, to let them be hunted for profit so that you can then help the other animals.
What would you speculate the solution?
With the rhino, I think it's obvious, and that's why John Hume has such a good solution, right? Like, is to sell the rhino horn. But with other animals like lion, I don't know how do you make that a profitable enterprise? Like, there's nothing from a lion that has a profit value that is valuable to the market other than hunting them. That's a great question. I don't have a good answer.
The way you equate that, and I agree with you that the reason rhino is because they have a value. But let's remember that value is based on bullshit. It's based on stuff that doesn't exist. So hopefully, as the humans evolve, that value will go away. Now, when you legalize the selling of that, I gotta believe his profit would go down on those horns. So would he still be able to maintain that land? Isn't there enough people that would go on like just photography safaris or just to see these animals and like just a big open area that's they don't make their money from killing them, but they make their money by having like a resort. And part of this resort is you go out and you can see these animals, you can take pictures, and then the ones like giraffes or whatever, maybe you can pet them.
I don't know. Like, I really don't know the answer to that. And that's hard, right? Like, so what's killing them mostly is our killing them. Like, they're dying because we're killing them.
Let's go to that side of the argument. So who is killing them? If they didn't have US and Canadians coming over, 70% of their business is US and Canadians.
I thought of this too. I was like, man, I don't want to bring race into this, but it's interesting. So this is in South Africa. 70% of the people coming and hunting are from the US and Canada. I mean, I just don't see very many black people coming together to go on a safari hunt.
Oh my God, no. There's lots of things that white people do that black people know we're fucking stupid about. You know what I mean?
Hey, like, I'm saying, like, white people are messed up. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be.
Well, we're all messed up in different ways. This just happens to be one of the areas that. Well, I don't know if they're messed up because, again, this is an unsettled argument in my head, and I'm a hypocrite because I do it. I do it in a worse way. As you stated earlier, I get my food mostly from farm animals, which is the fucking worst. They're treated like dog shit. But on the other side of the table is if you take away the hunters from Canada and America, then who's going to kill the animal? You're going to have real hunters in South Africa killing them, and they're going to kill them off too, but they're not killing them off because they want to just have a trophy sheep in their big living room. They're doing it because that's what they have to do to survive. So if you take the money out of it, they're still going to die off. The rhinos are still going to die off. Any animals that's going to be a trophy will die off, even if Americans don't come over there, because of the fact that the people there are so poor that they have to kill these animals for either just food, money, clothes, or whatever. And can you blame them? I would do the same thing if I was poor down there and I had to take care of my family. Even if you take the money out, there's still an issue here, because once the South Africans kill off all these animals, then they're really screwed because there's no incentive to keep this going. The answer is somewhere in this puzzle, and it's probably going to have to be modified some other way.
It just seems like money is at the center of everything. And I think we can both agree that no one really wants, nobody, even these huge game hunters, no one wants any of these animals to become extinct. I mean, I can't imagine I would meet anyone that would say, yeah, I think the rhino should become extinct. Almost no one believes that.
There's a lot of people that would believe that we don't want to do anything to not have them become extinct. So they don't like actively try to make them become extinct, but they don't care the other way either. And to be fair to them, dude, we lose millions of species. I'm probably talking out my ass, but millions of species every year. And I don't necessarily know that all of them are needed for us to progress. I mean, that's kind of a cold way of looking at it. I mean, I don't know that rhinos add anything to the ecosystem. I don't know that they don't either. One of the main characters in this is a guy named Philip Glass. So there's a scene where he's got these cute little sheep. They're running around. They're like black and white sheep. And they're just, man, they're really cute. And he picks one up. And he says right there that what he does is when those sheep are 3 months old, they get sold to high-end restaurants and grocery stores. 3 months old. That's when they're slaughtered off. And I don't know, man. That just doesn't seem right from the outset that you take a 3 month, but I don't know if it's just because I see him as cute and cuddly that I don't think is right. Because if it's a rat, I'd be like, fuck that motherfucker. Right?
Yeah, just destroy that rat. I don't care.
Right. But if it's something cute, we're like, 3 months old, that's mean. And again, why does it go to the rich? Because the fact that it's exclusive, that there's a short supply of it. So that's where he makes his money from. So for me, if I'm being honest about it, I distrust that guy from that point on, because I don't get that. Doesn't mean I'm right. It just means I don't get his mindset up.
Right. Well, I think I'm glad you said that, because let's talk about the thing I think that is at the fulcrum or the crux of who this guy is in this realm of his life. There's a scene where they do an interview with him, and he talks about as a kid with his dad, and his dad really pushed him into hunting, basically, right? And he said they would go along, they'd be driving along, and they'd see some deer or something out in a clearing, and his dad would just stop the truck and shut it off, and they'd sit there and look at the animals, and he would wait for his son to get out and take a shot at him. Like it was an expectation of him. And then he says, and this was the thing that made me realize, is he said, my dad died a few years ago, and if he could see that his son was hunting lion, he would be proud. He would be extremely proud. And that right there is it. There is no reason other than the emotional turmoil inside of a human being that can make you see the killing of an animal that you're not really going to use in any way, that you're literally taking back as a trophy. He wants that trophy to say, Dad would be proud of me. And he shoots this lion. He walks up to it and he just cries. I mean, he sobs, and it's not, I don't know if it's a crying from sadness that he's killed this animal, or if it seems more like a catharsis. Like he has emotionally let go. It's almost like it's almost like therapy for him. Like unresolved issues just kind of come out. And then I wrote in my notes, truly disturbing.
I agree with you. I thought the same thing. I thought it was he was still trying to please his dad. He could never please, he could never please his dad enough when his dad was alive. And so now in his dad's death, he's still trying to please him by doing what his dad would find great in his eye. And if you also notice, he does the same thing he's starting the same thing with his son. The whole movie starts with him shooting his son 2 deer. And the thing I found interesting about that is his son kills the one deer, but he even mentions something about he's still breathing, and the dad's like, fuck it, he's not going anywhere. So his dad was more concerned about the deer getting up and getting away than him being in pain. And if you fast forward through some of his other kills, that poor elephant that he killed, it just sat there basically crying, and they didn't put another bullet in him. And the only thing I can think of is if they put another bullet in it, somehow it ruins the skin or ruins the I don't know. So I think that he definitely had daddy issues. He was still trying to please his dad, even though his dad's dead. Didn't he say something? Oh, I know something that was kind of oddball to me. He did throw out some type of Bible reference. Do you remember what that was?
You know, he's religious. He's a guy's from Texas, obviously. He's going to be religious. He's a white guy, hunter from Texas. He's going to be religious, you know. He says in the Bible, he was, you know, I read the Bible, and in the Bible it says God gave man dominion over all the animals of the earth. And that means that we can hunt them and we can use them. That doesn't mean that we're not to have respect, because you know, what's interesting about this guy is I think he believes what he's doing is adding to the conservation too, because he's spending all this money. And he feels that he's also, while hunting animals, he's also contributing to the conservation and preservation of these animals.
I think that's what he tells himself to justify it.
It could be. But the thing is, we've just talked about earlier, he may actually be contributing to it.
No, you're right. You're right. I don't know. But I don't think the reasons he does it mainly
is the conservation. I mean, that's not why he's doing it. That's the thing about human motivation, is you can do something for a primary reason. Like, for example, I was having a conversation with my girlfriend the other day. We were talking about, is having children ethical? Because you bring them into this world of suffering, etc. And they're going to suffer. If they come into being, they're going to suffer, period. That's just the way it is. And is non-existence better than having suffering, no matter how much good exists in your life? Because neither of us want children right now. And I was saying, you know, it's ethical of me, it's moral of me to decide not to have children, because they will suffer. And she goes, you know, but it's not that moral, because that's not really your primary reason. Your primary reason is because you don't want them, and that's a selfish reason. And then you've got this other secondary reason that is perhaps moral. You're not bringing people into the world that are going to suffer, right? So you have one potentially selfish and non-moral reason, and then one reason that goes along with that, your primary motivation, that is moral. And she says it's not really a moral thing, a truly moral thing, until you, one, don't have children, but you also help children that already exist in the world. Like, for example, if you adopted children that are in bad situations and you tried to help them and give them the best life possible, that would be truly moral. And I had a hard time agreeing with that. I'm like, I don't see that. You know, something doesn't have to be 100% moral to be moral. And with this guy hunting, going back to the guy hunting, his primary motivations is because he just wants this trophy. It's going to make him feel good to do something that his dad thought was great, and that's going to boost his self-esteem and confidence, and it's purely selfish in the end. But it has the secondary effect of potentially helping the species through the funding of these preservation and conservation organizations that are running these operations.
That's what we do, is we sell ourselves the good that we're doing, quote unquote, even when it's something bullshit.
In psychology, Freud said this was one of our ego defense mechanisms called rationalization. We rationalize the things we do that may actually be bad.
I don't know that he feels that it's bad, because he's rationalized it. Probably the biggest part is the Bible. So if you believe in the Bible, like that's you really like, dude, this is what I believe in, you can use that as your rationale, because it's very tough for anybody to say, well, no, you're wrong, without seeming anti-religious, I guess. And then the other part of it is that they kind of give them an out when they say, well, you're doing this to help keep them alive, which there's grains of truth to that. But if you really said, well, my main reason for doing this is so I can save animals, and it's like, okay, then just donate the $20,000 and don't get the trophy.
Right, obviously. So that's clearly not his main motivation, right?
Right. It's more of it. You know what it is? It seems like when I seen that they have a scene where they go to like a big expo in Vegas where they have all these different vendors from, I'm assuming, across the world that are in this hunting industry, this particular type of hunting industry of where they have animals locked in for you to find and shoot. It seems like it's kind of a pissing contest more than anything, and it's mostly a pissing contest for richer people. And I don't have any problem, you know, if you're rich, then, you know, good for you, but it's mostly these tours are for richer people. It's a pissing contest, and some of those people, man, I can't fucking stand them, because like this lady that comes on, she's talking about the reason it's okay for her to hunt crocodiles is because crocodiles are mean. It's like, what are you talking about? They're mean. They're you know, they're animals. This is what they do. They hunt or whatever. But the other part of the equation is because she wants shoes and a matching purse. And that to me sounds like she can't wait to go talk to Ethel and Mermel down at the coffee shop and say, look, bitches, I got this. You don't have that. So fuck you. So that's why I can't stand that bitch. So on the other side of the equation, though, outside of this expo, they have people out there demonstrating against these types of organization. And I hate those people too, because I think they're hypocrites. Because the one lady's out there, and no big deal, she's a little overweight. She's saying that she's a vegan and she doesn't eat. I don't believe her. I think she's lying.
Right, I thought so too.
And then if you look at the people that are there, like one lady's got some fur little leopard thing on her head. It's like, you know that was made by some impoverished either adult or kid in China. So you guys are hypocrites. You're saying on one side that you want to save all these animals, but $5 is one of you has an In-N-Out burger in your stomach. So I hate those people too. I hate the extremes on both sides of this issue.
Well, the problem is it's very, very difficult, maybe impossible to be 100% moral. That doesn't mean you can't. And this was the argument I was having with my girlfriend. I was like, going back to the little statement there, I said, hey, I think I'm being moral by not having children. Personally, I think, not bringing people into the world to suffer is a good thing. And she goes, okay, but it's not really moral. She's like, you're actually being a hypocrite by not going and, say, adopting other children that do have bad lives that you could help. And I said, I don't know if I can get on board with that. Maybe that would be a even more moral thing to do, but that doesn't mean what I'm doing is not also moral. So what I'm saying back to these people who are protesting, sure, they've probably got things in their lives that they're doing that does seem somewhat hypocritical, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't stand up against something that they also think is unethical. As long as you're self-evaluative. For example, like I want to be vegetarian. Like I want to be, but I can't be. It's not that I can't be. It's like I won't allow myself. And it's so weird because I firmly believe that being a vegetarian, there's no question that not participating in our current system of factory farming would be more ethical. Like, yeah, I still eat meat that I know has been factory farmed. And it's like, what is it about my brain that allows me to continue such behavior knowing it's so truly ethically and morally wrong?
I think it goes back to the cliche of out of sight, out of mind. Because if you actually had to go into the farmhouse and pull out your cow and kill this calf or kill this little pig, I don't think you would do it. So it's really convenience. It's because we have convenience for it. The industry's packages it up nice and neatly for us.
But it's not out of mind though, because I'm pretty aware. I'm pretty aware of what goes on, and that awareness doesn't stop me.
So I hear you, but again, out of sight, out of mind, man. So when you go to McDonald's, you go through the drive-thru, there's all kinds of cues that are going on in your head that this is okay, be it years of advertising or your senses know that this is going to taste good, your belly being hungry. You take those same things and you got to go up to a farmhouse and slaughter this animal or have them caged up for 4 or 5 months. I'm telling you, your desire for that food would go away, I believe. So I think it's more about out of sight, out of mind. So we like to not think about those things when we're munching down a cheeseburger, because if you really thought about those things when you're chomping down on a quarter pounder or whatever, I don't think that you would do it.
It could be. It could well be.
So there's ethical farming that I have no problems with. Zero. It's just one of those things where it's how the animals are treated before death that we have problems with. One thing that this kind of reminds me of, and this is an issue that I don't know if I'm on the wrong side of it, but I always get shit when I bring it up. I think this is not the same as zoos, but something like zoos. I don't know why we have zoos other than for our own amusement, and I just think that that's horrible. It's horrible to have a wild animal locked up in a very small space, but these same people, some of these people that are against hunting probably have taken their kids to the zoo, and I feel like the zoos are fairly bad things.
No, I'm actually 100% with you on that. I don't like zoos either. And in fact, every time I've ever been to a zoo, I always say I'm never going back. I guess that experience in a way is good for children to see something that they otherwise would never see, probably in person. But you're right. But that doesn't make it better, right? Like just because, these children get an experience, does this human child's experience, is it really more valuable than this animal's entire life? I don't know. That doesn't seem to add up to me. So I'm with you 100%, I think. Now,
zoo hospitals, I'm fine with. So like if they find an injured animal and they mend him or her back to health and ship him back off, then great. I think that's good. But that's not always the case. It's a lot of it is they mend them up and then, hey, go do your song and dance, zebra, because somebody's got to pay the bills. We're utilizing animals for our own enjoyment past necessity. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. You could continue talking about this movie for a while because the issue is complex, and I don't think if anybody says they know the answer, I would call them a liar. I found this movie to be awesome as far as a documentary goes. The production value on it was extremely high. The editing for me was top notch. I thought that whoever put this together on the edit side, they did a really, really good job. So every part of the production angle I found to be very good. I thought the story was great. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10 on IMDb scale.
I think any documentary that can kind of spark that conversation deserves something high. Plus, like everything you said, the production was awesome, so I also gave it a 9 out of 10.
The only thing for me that would have made it a 10 out of 10 is if they had realistic answers to this problem. And that's not bad on them, because I don't know if there is a realistic answer, but that for me is what would have made it a 10 out of 10, is if they also had call to action for all of us to do, and that action would actually solve the problem. Thanks for joining us on the Doc Review Show, and we'll see you next time.